Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my September reading wrap up. Before we get into the wrap up, I did want to preface this video with a little announcement. Some of you may or may not know that the recent Hurricane Helene that passed through did hit my area and caused so much devastation and damage and destruction. This is my first time being able to sit down and film a video with power, and I'm so grateful that that really was the extent of things and that all my loved ones here are safe. But others in surrounding areas very close to me, especially in Western North Carolina, we're not as lucky, and it has just been heartbreaking to see everything they've been going through in the aftermath of the hurricane. So I'm gonna leave a few links in my bio of ways to help out and donate if you are able and have the means. I know it would be so appreciated by those in my community and the surrounding communities. So thank you in advance, and thank you so much for bearing with me as I try to get back into the swing of things when it comes to filming and reading and YouTube. Also, other elephant in the room, I did dye my hair. I went kind of like a coppery red, but it still has so much blonde in it, so I feel like in some lights it's really hard to tell, but I feel like it is showing up on camera. So made some changes for the fall. I am excited about it. With all the news and all the updates, let's go ahead and hop into talking about the books that I read in September. The very first book I read is Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood. It feels like I read this a lifetime ago because I think I read the majority of this in August and then didn't finish it until like very early September. So it's a little hazy in my mind, but this is Ali Hazelwood's latest release, and in it we're following Rue and Eli. Rue is a biotech engineer. She works for a food science company, and Eli works for another company that's actually trying to come in and take over the company that Rue works for. Rue and Eli actually had a previous encounter, so when they come across one another again in this work setting, it's kind of a shock for both of them, and it follows things from there. Rue is very resentful towards Eli because of who he works for and what they're trying to do to the company that she works for, so it is a bit of an enemies to lovers situation. Going into this, I knew that this one was a bit different from Ali Hazelwood's other STEMinist romances because it is more spice than usual, and normally she does a lot of spice, but everyone had said that this really focuses on the physical relationship, and she even has a little author's note at the beginning saying that this book leads more towards erotica than it does romance. So I was prepared for that going in. I feel like you should be too if you plan to pick this one up. I ended up giving this one 3.75 stars. I liked it, but I didn't love it nearly as much as Ali Hazelwood's other STEM romances. I feel like she definitely is straying a bit. I feel like her earlier STEM romances were very cutesy, quirky, which I personally like. And in this book especially, it felt a lot more intense. The characters kind of had a darker, mature vibe to them. I feel like the characters weren't at all what I had an issue with in this book. It was more so the storyline, I guess. It was just kind of slow going, especially in the middle. I feel like it pulled me in at the start, and then for the majority of the book after the beginning portion, I just found it to be very slow moving, very boring. It dragged a bit for me, and I was honestly like dreading picking it up. Towards the end, it did pick up because some unexpected things happened that kind of sucked me back in, and overall I did enjoy it. I liked the characters. They had really good chemistry. I liked that this had a different feel to Ali Hazelwood's other books, even though I probably prefer her other books more than this one. I don't know, I just feel like it mainly dragged for me a lot in the middle, and the spice wasn't too much for me. I feel like there was maybe one time where I was like, okay, this isn't really necessary. This is kind of taking away from the plot, but for the majority of it, I think since I went in with the mindset knowing that it would have more spice than usual, it didn't bother me. There still was the emotional connection there, and it still had a strong storyline. Just the middle of the book kind of lost me. The next book I read is the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. Grady Hendrix has always been an author that I wanted to give a second chance to because I read My Best Friend's Exorcism by him 2 years ago now. It was exactly 2 years ago because I read it in September, I remember, and I did not like that book at all. It wasn't even that, it just wasn't for me. I just found it to be a bit problematic, but I feel like so many people love his books. The concepts of them sound so cool to me, and he's from Charleston, South Carolina, which I'm from South Carolina, so just having that connection. His books are usually set there, so I like that familiarity of it. So I did want to give him another chance, and I actually picked up this book physically last summer, just couldn't get into it at all, but I did hear the audiobook recommended for this book, and I saw that it was narrated by one of my favorite audiobook narrators, narrators, so I decided to give it a try listening to it, and I'm really glad I did because I think audiobook is the way to go for this one. In this book, we follow our main character, Patricia. She is a very southern, classy woman, leads a very traditional lifestyle as a stay-at-home mom. She is in this book club with a bunch of snooty women reading these like highbrow literature type books that no one is actually really interested in. So a group of the women in this snooty book club end up branching off and reading things that actually interest them, even if they aren't proper books. They start reading like really smutty romances, true crime, and the topic of conversation goes from talking about these books to talking about this suspicious new neighbor who moves in who is very peculiar, very different. Patricia ends up becoming even more suspicious of this new neighbor when some children in the area go missing, and she's wondering if he might have something to do with it. I really enjoyed our main character, Patricia. I feel like she's one of those characters that you really root for, and I felt everything with her. I was so invested in what she was going through. There were so many times when I got so frustrated and so exasperated at her situation and the people around her. This book definitely had the horror elements to it that made me very uncomfortable and icky at times, so bear that in mind if you're going to pick this one up. But I did think there was really great commentary in here, a lot of symbolism, things I don't want to give away that I think you should uncover for yourself as you read. But overall, I really enjoyed the storyline and was invested from probably like the 40% mark to the end to find out what was going to happen, and I liked the direction that it took. Then the next book I read, I also listened to on audio. That is Here One Moment by Liane Moriarty. Liane Moriarty is an auto-buy author for me. She is the author of Big Little Lies and 9 Perfect Strangers, so she's had a lot of big hits that are really well known and have been adapted into shows that have also been successful. I always say this when I talk about her, but she is Australian. All her books take place in Australia, so I love listening to the audiobook because the accents are just perfect and make me even more immersed in the story. This one is her latest release. It came out early last month. In this book, we followed this group of characters on this plane. The plane ends up getting delayed for quite a while, and it's just sitting on the tarmac for hours. So we get to see a wide cast of characters and lots of different personality types. We're kind of seeing these people on the plane, like where they're headed, where they came from, their frustrations with the delay, how different people are taking it. And then all of a sudden, in the midst of this one woman on the plane stands up, walks through, and gives every single person on the plane a prediction to the age they're going to die and how they're going to die. So she's just like walking through like 101, pneumonia, 35, car crash, and it is just crazy. You're like, what is going on? Is she really a psychic? Is she just a crazy lady? What is happening? And I really liked this book a lot. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I loved the structure of it. At first, I kind of thought that the whole book was gonna take place on this plane, and we were just gonna see like the madness and chaos ensue. And I was really happy that it didn't take that direction, and we get to see these characters and their lives for many months and even years to come. And we kind of get to see if the predictions come true or not, how the predictions kind of affect these different characters and their behaviors. We also get the perspective of the woman who gave the predictions, and we see her backstory, and it was just so interesting. I was hooked every second of listening to this book. Despite there being a big cast of characters, I never once was confused on who was who. She really is great at differentiating people from one another and giving them very unique backstories and different traits that make them so easy to distinguish, but equally I was invested in all of them. There was no character where I was like, okay, I'm ready to skip over and go to this next character. I was so excited to see what was going to happen with each person. I also really liked that there were so many great life lessons in here without it feeling like it was being shoved down your throat. It was very subtly woven into the story, and I feel like this was one where the concept was so good and the execution was equally as good. I really enjoyed how everything ended too and wrapped up and tied together. I just thought it was really, really well done. The whole time too, I could picture this being like a show or a mini series. I think it would be great for television, so I hope it gets adapted. Just a really fun one. I didn't get the 5-star feeling, but still great and would highly recommend. Okay, and the next 2 books that I read were for a Reading Sad Books video that I filmed. If you want even more in-depth thoughts on either of these books, definitely check that video out. The first book I read for it was If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nowlin. I read this on my Kindle and then I listened to it on audio in tandem. In this book, we follow our 2 main characters, Autumn and Finn, and they have been childhood best friends literally from the day that they were born. Both of their mothers are best friends. They got pregnant pregnant with Autumn and Finn at the same exact time, born within the same week of one another. They're next door neighbors. So Autumn and Finn really have been inseparable since birth. They do family events together, holidays, things like that. They are just super close and best friends. But you do see as they've grown up, kind of like in middle school and now especially high school, something happened that made the two of them just kind of drift apart. They're not enemies, they don't hate each other at all, but they just don't really talk. They've gone their separate ways. They're very much in different friend groups now, doing their own thing. They'll still see each other at like family events and stuff and hang out through their parents being friends, but that's really the extent of their relationship in high school for the majority of the book that we're seeing them. And then the prologue of the book does hint that something very tragic is going to happen at the end of Autumn and Finn's story. We kind of get little clues, but we really don't know what's coming until the very end. And I liked this one a lot. I gave it 4 stars. It is YA and it reads very YA, so I'm obviously not the intended demographic, but I feel like if I had read this in high school, I would have connected with it so much more and really related to the characters and the topics that were introduced in this book. I just feel like at my age, I couldn't relate as much to the characters and what they were going through. It does feel very slice of life, like we get the whole book told through Autumn's perspective, and it very much is her day-to-day like high school life with school, classes, teachers, her family, her friends, her boyfriend, and then kind of her relationship with Finn as well. So in some ways it did get a bit repetitive, but at the same time I really liked the writing style. It was very fast and easy to read despite it being a harder subject matter and despite knowing that this sad thing is coming at the end. I do feel like it was a lot of buildup and then the ending came on so fast and it was super rushed, and it could have definitely been fleshed out more with a little more explanation, but that's really my biggest critique of it. Other than that, I did enjoy my time reading it. I didn't like sob cry, but it did make me tear up. And then I finally tackled A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. Oh my gosh, this book. All the trigger warnings. I feel like if you've seen this book, you've heard that it's just the saddest thing people have ever read. I was very intimidated to pick it up because despite knowing it was sad, I really didn't know what the subject matter was going to be or what content was going to be in here. I usually am one that doesn't have to look up trigger warnings, so I just didn't know what to expect at all. But I was really nervous going into it about how this was going to affect me because I've just heard people say that this altered their brain chemistry, that they think about this book every day. They can't look at certain things without thinking about this book and the characters. So I was intimidated to say the least. In this book, we're focused on following our main character Jude over the span of his whole life. And at every stage in his life, he has had to endure horrific, traumatic things. We also get perspectives of other people in his life, mainly his 3 best friends. We kind of see them periodically throughout, some more than others, just depending on their relationship to Jude at different stages. I feel like most often when I hear people talking about this book and a rating, people either give it 5 stars, 1 star, or they're like, I don't know how to rate it. And I kind of fall in the camp of I don't know where to rate it. And I know that's so annoying because when I hear people talk about it and they don't know what to rate it, I'm the kind of person that needs to know how you felt to kind of gauge what I might think of it. I think for me, this book definitely isn't a 5 star. It's not a 4 star, but it's definitely not a 1 or 2 star. So I'm somewhere in the 3 star range, maybe like a 3.5, 3.75. I feel like the first half of the book, I was really sucked in. The writing style is just astounding. It is so well written and I was so invested in these characters. I feel like the second half though is where it kind of lost me, and it was almost like a shift in writing style too. I just wasn't enjoying it as much. And yes, the second half does pick up in terms of being more sad and more heavy, and you learn more things about Jude and it makes the story harder to read, but I don't think that's why I didn't enjoy it as much. I feel like I didn't connect to Jude's character as much in the second half. He is very much a closed book to everyone around him, but that includes the reader, so you really just get what he's willing to share at different moments. I also think the more I was in Jude's head, the more frustrated I got with him as a character. I definitely sympathize with him because of everything he's been through and it's so horrific, but at the same time it made it really hard to connect and sympathize despite knowing some of what you know and understanding why he is the way he is. It just made it hard for me to get into it, and I found that when I closed the book, I wasn't really thinking about the characters anymore the way I've heard some people say these characters are going to stick with them forever. I didn't necessarily get that connection. Also, this book didn't really make me cry the way I thought thought it would. I definitely teared up a few times, but I feel like the times that I teared up were unexpected moments and not necessarily the things you would expect you would cry at in this book. I also feel like I'm surprised I haven't been spoiled for what actually goes on in this book, because you hear that it's so sad and so horrific, but you don't necessarily know what that means and what that entails unless you look it up. So I was just expecting the craziest, most shocking thing, and to me it wasn't shocking. It was horrific, but it wasn't shocking because it's very much, unfortunately, something that happens in the world. It's horrible that it does, but I don't know, I guess I thought there was going to be this huge shock factor with this book, and I feel like I'm coming off as so heartless, but I think I just went into it expecting to be so devastated, and I was, but there was also kind of like a disconnect because of how I felt about the characters. By the end, I almost kind of felt like Jude wasn't written as a character that you're supposed to connect with, but more so as like a vessel for the author to just put this horrible, sad stuff on paper. So I completely understand when people say that this book is like trauma porn, because at points it did feel like that, but at the same time, these are very real things that could very much be what someone actually goes through in a lifetime. So I don't know, it's a frustrating one because I did very much enjoy the first half, and at parts it definitely felt like a 5-star. And even in the second half of the book, when it would reference things that happened earlier in Jude's life, like the happy times in the first half of the book, I was like reminiscing on that and like, oh yeah, that was so fun when I read about that. I enjoyed that moment. But there wasn't much of that in the second half. So this book was very heavy, very lengthy, took me the entire month to get through. I'm glad I read it because now I kind of know what people are talking about when they reference this book, and I feel like it was such an accomplishment to read it. I don't know, it didn't have the impact on me that I thought it would, and that's not me trying to be heartless and not sympathizing with the things this character went through. It's just a hard one to talk about. It's hard for me to explain my feelings, I feel, without spoiling things or without sounding one type of way. I feel all kinds of things about this book, and I do completely get to when people say they would never recommend this, because I would not recommend this to anyone. Definitely check trigger warnings, but if you're like so terrified to go into it but you still are curious and think you can handle it and are in the mental space to read it, I would give it a try. I feel like it was sad, but maybe not as sad and shocking as I thought it would be based on people's reactions to it. And then the last book that I read is Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. This is book 2 in her latest series, the Rose Hill series. In this book we follow West and Skylar. West is our male main character who we met in book 1. He is the brother of Rosie from book 1, as well as the best friend of Ford from book 1, and he is a single dad of 2 children. He works on the ranch and kind of takes care of horses and rehabilitates them. And then our female main character is Skylar, who was also mentioned in book 1, but we weren't really introduced to her. She is a famous country music singer. She has a lot going on in her personal and professional life. She is coming to Rose Hill to record and work on some music at Ford Grant's recording studio there in Rose Hill. She ends up connecting with West because she's staying at his bunkhouse on the property, and that's kind of how their relationship starts up. I gave this one 3.75 stars, which is the same rating I gave the first book in this series. I liked it. I feel like I've maybe connected with these characters more than the characters in book 1, but for me the plot in this one just got kind of lost. I feel like I wasn't super invested in the story or really anything by the second half of the book. I just kind of had an I don't care attitude towards it. I didn't dislike it, but I wasn't really invested or loving it either. I think the thing for me about this series is everything about it so far feels a little bit bland. I love Elsie Silver so much. I adore Chestnut Springs. I love her writing style. It is so bingeable and so easy to read. This was the perfect palate cleanser to pick up in between reading A Little Life, to kind of be that lightheartedness that I needed, and I really appreciated it for that. But I don't know, I felt like when I was reading Chestnut Springs, all the characters were so different from one another and they felt so colorful, and the Chestnut Springs setting, I literally wanted to be there. I was not into like the country cowgirl aesthetic at all before reading those books, and I literally wanted to like go to a rodeo, go to a country concert, be at the ranch. Those books transported me, and I don't feel that with this universe and these books. I don't know, I'm not really feeling that same like found family vibe where I'm loving the characters, the setting, everything just feels a little bit bland to me, and I don't know if that's just a me thing and not clicking with it, or if it just is such a change to the Chestnut Springs series, but it feels the same, just like a toned down version of that. And I don't know if I'm loving it so far. Like, it's certainly not bad. I still gave it a great rating. Just not my favorite thing. I feel like I need some characters or something to happen in this series to really spice things up. So those are all the books I read in September, so that is going to conclude the wrap up. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you're not already by hitting the red button down below. Let me know what y'all read in September, what you liked, what you didn't like. If you read any of the books that I read last month, let me know all your thoughts on them so we can discuss in the comments. Thank you guys again, and I will see you so soon in the next one. Bye guys.